Hey, we are back. This is the Pharmacy Podcast Network bringing you Legal Shark Week with Darshan Kulkarni, our go-to lawyer, who's been part of our network for quite some time. Welcome back to Legal Shark Week. I tell you what, our first Legal Shark Week was just amazing. It was so much fun talking about the sharky, dangerous waters of navigating the legal world in our healthcare industry and specifically pharmacy care. I enjoy talking with Darshan. He's always giving us great, timely information with his writings, his blogs. Take a look at Kulkarni Law Firm or just Google Darshan Talks. That's his podcast. And we just are super excited to be talking about the next episode today. And you're watching live. If you're watching live, we appreciate you tuning in. If you are listening to the podcast version, this will give you a little bit more ability to give us suggestions that we can look forward for future episodes. As a matter of fact, if you as a pharmacist, somebody in the pharmacy industry, pharmacy owner, compounder, compounding's hot. If you ever had a legal issue that we can dig into and unpack, as long as it's not infringing on any kind of non-disclosure and becoming a legal issue in and of itself, please reach out to us. We would love to have you on Legal Shark Week talking about the specific issue. If you want us to make private the names of organizations or people, absolutely would respect that. But this was fun. The changing landscape of the pharmacy sector specifically, and with PBM reform, and with what the AMA is calling creep scope or scope creep, where pharmacists are doing more, and how there's expansion of different sectors of pharmacy care, especially things like clinical trials and digital therapeutics, digital health, marketing your pharmacy services. We kind of touched on a little bit of that during the first episode, but since it was our first episode, it was more of like a wide swath of information that Darshan was talking about, and we were excited to be a part of it. He really kind of is able to dig in. And once again, if you're not linked up with him on LinkedIn, just go to Darshan, that's Darshan, Kulkarni, Kulkarni, on LinkedIn. And we're excited to have Darshan back for Legal Shark Week 2.
Week 2, we're going to do this.
That's right. And I titled it because I was just being facetious. Do I need a lawyer? Like, why do I need a lawyer? Right. And
I agree.
There's a lot of things that could come up in the sharky waters of healthcare that you might need a lawyer. So welcome back, Darshan. How was your week?
It's been a busy week. It's been a super fun week. A lot of things happening. A lot of interesting things. I'm dealing with some really interesting pharmacy clients and physicians, which has been kind of interesting, and the interplay between the professions, which is really, really fun, really, really interesting. And then there's a lot of stuff like you and I discussed, Todd, about like what's just happening in the pharmacy industry, and not enough people are talking about it. So I get to come on, I get to talk to the Todd Eury, the podfather, if you will, and I get to find out a little bit more about sort of what his take, his feeling of the pulse of what pharmacists are going through. And we get to riff on it. We get to talk about it. And I'm excited.
I am too. I always enjoy the insights that you bring to the network. You've been a long-standing participant of the PPN. We beat you up back in the days of gavel and pestle. But listen, we're going to be talking about this Ohio Valley article that came out about a pharmacy raid by the DEA. That's crazy. We're going to be talking about telehealth and pharmacy considerations and how that bends. We're going to be talking about medication delivery and compliance, and also a strange one that we're going to be kind of digging into, which is unmarked cars and secret orders and secret society.
Ooh, I don't know about this one.
dig into that one.
This should be fun. This is why I come to the Podfather, to hear about things I haven't thought of, things we haven't seen, an issue spot which requires more research and more analysis. But that's why we're on. Here's the question. I also want to say, if people want to ask questions, I welcome the opportunity to do that. And just to be clear, I'm sharing this on my StreamYard as well. So hopefully people watch, people comment, and we want to hear people comment. We want people to tell us what they think.
That's right. And I said before you came aboard, and to the listeners, listen, if you have a specific case and we can strip it of the details, we could strip it of like the name of the organization or the people, and you want to come and mash up with Darshan and I and kind of dig into it. That's what this is really about. We want to make this a collective and want to really help people. We want to move forward. We want to move pharmacy care forward. So I'm excited to jump.
Absolutely. I do want to say, not legal advice for those people who are listening, but happy to talk in generalities, give some information. As Jennifer Noonan points out, you are the Podfather.
I love Jennifer Noonan and working with her and the Accessia Health team. They're doing things for payment support for so many patients.
It's so important right now.
It really is.
Because you're seeing more and more the DOJ, OIG are kicking in and sort of asking. They're very, very picky about what's expected, and you need to make sure you comply. So I'm seeing that from not just DOJ, but State Attorney General's offices, Board of Pharmacies. So I don't know exactly what Accessia does, but I'm glad that they're there. Someone's there to look out for them. Look out for pharmacists.
Yeah, I think they'll be at the NASP, the National Association of Specialty Pharmacy. We're going to be headed to Nashville beginning of October.
You lead a good life, don't you, Todd?
I love to work on fire every day because I just want to dig into content that really helps to move pharmacy care forward and led by pharmacists. But I'm going to shoot right out of the cannon. We're going to jump into this. And if anyone, once again, has...
Yes, so 15% on health essentials. Is that what we're talking about?
We're not legally authorized to give away 15% of daily essentials on Amazon. That's the ad that you see there. But we have a article.
Actually, Todd, do you mind if we start from the 15% for a second?
Yeah, let's do it.
So here's my big take. Amazon's coming into health, as we all know. That's their big thing, right? So my big question would be, as they come into health, one of the things you have to be really careful about, and this is actually true not just for an Amazon, which is a massive company dealing with this, but also with your smaller companies. If you have a person who comes in and is trying to, for example, get non-healthcare information, can you use the fact that they came in for XYZ medications to adjust what coupons you send to them? And this reminds me of, go ahead.
You got me thinking about this. So I've said things and I keep repeating the same thing. And I know I got it from a lawyer, but I don't even know this is true. So I'm going to embarrass myself. All right. So over the years, I've said to pharmacists, specifically our community pharmacists, independents, hey, after the last time the prescription went out, you have 9 months to market to that patient about some ancillary things, as long as they were active. Now, I don't know where I got that, but your point exactly with this Amazon coupon, how long does a community pharmacy have to market to?
You don't. So the way it usually works, and this is actually, so I'll go back to the famous story that everyone talks about and then talk about where we are today. So the famous story everyone talks about is, this is going back, I want to say 15 years, maybe 20 years. This young woman walked into, I want to say it was a Target, and don't hold me to that, it could be something else. And she bought a couple of things. She walked out, she went home. Then she was 16 years old. Suddenly Target started sending her maternity stuff. And the idea was that, and the father got really upset, going, she's 16 years old, stop sending her maternity stuff.
Yep.
Here's what it turns out. She was pregnant. And what Target had discovered is that people who buy this combination of products are more likely to also buy these other things, and they're more likely to be pregnant. So what we're talking about is data mining based off of someone's information. Now, when you're talking about rich data like PHI, private health information, personal health information, I can never remember which one it is,
Yeah.
but PHI, you have to be very careful because that information can't just be shared. You have to have controls in place. And you definitely can't share it between your front end and your back end, or vice versa. So you have to be, now you can do things with your front end. So what they did in that Target case may be potentially completely legal because it was just the front end. But if you start intermingling data, that's when you have to start being really careful. So that would be my first piece of advice. And you need to make sure you have privacy programs in place to handle that. I'm actually helping companies with that, for companies with that as we speak. So it's a very, very important issue that needs to be addressed. One of my favorite things, I speak to insurance agents, and it's very clear at this point, it's not whether you will be hacked, it's when you will be hacked. So if, and can get very, very expensive, but you have at this moment some incredibly enriched data, and you have to be careful. Now, there are ways to address that as well. So for example, getting waivers from your patients to be able to share that data. And there are pharmacies out there who share that data. There's also another one, which is sharing data. So you get the approval from patients to be able to share that data if they're okay with that. And that can be a source of income for a lot of pharmacies. You need to know the right group of people who might be interested in buying it, but there are loads of companies who want to buy that kind of data. But the other thing is, and you're seeing this with the CVS, for example, they are trying to go, we have X amount of data. If we add additional data to it, and I don't know if CVS specifically is doing this because I don't know exactly how they're doing it. Well, not CVS, Walgreens, because CVS is out of this business altogether. But I was thinking of like clinical research. As a pharmacist, I never had things like ICD-9 codes and stuff. But theoretically, what you could do is you could get a certain amount of data, add in additional data, and go, I have a more complete picture of this patient now. And then use that to target those patients for, say, clinical trials or the like. But you have to be very, very careful because you now need to start thinking about when you add that data, is the patient still anonymized? Are they still pseudo-anonymized? And what is the implication of that? But the overall point being, you have a lot of data. People want that data. How are you protecting it? Is it even your data to share? I was just at a conference, and it was on clinical trial negotiation. So, incredibly interesting. I'm the only person in this room that probably says that, but I love what I do. Having said that, everyone was talking about how pharma companies are buying data from hospitals to do clinical research and blah, blah, blah. I raised my hand and asked a very simple question. How is it the hospital's data to sell? And how is the pharmaceutical company's data to buy? Because in the end, it's the patient's data.
Yep. And
that becomes a question. You need to solve for that question as you continue. But going back to that 15%, remember that you have this data. Now what you can do, and this is where you prove your worth as a pharmacist. I'm seeing this information. I have this additional information. Can we talk about the progress of your diabetes? I see that you were taking metformin before, and now you're taking semaglutide. Is this right for you? And that is exactly what that data is meant for. It's meant to help patients. So be careful about intermingling of data, but be sure to use the data for what it's meant for, which is helping patients with their healthcare needs.
Makes sense. That makes sense. So I do want to tie something onto this.
Please.
Back to the independent community pharmacy that's out there marketing other services. When I think of a club, I go to my grocery store. I love Giant Eagle here in Pittsburgh. They actually have a pharmacy, obviously. They're very good, very powerful, active pharmacy group, which is impressive. So if I get their rewards card, does that inside the T's and C's, the terms and conditions, when somebody says, yes, I want this rewards card because it has something else to do with Giant Eagle, you buy stuff, you get points. Sure. Could pharmacy kind of latch onto that and start, for example, if I'm a diabetic, could pharmacy send supplement information that they know is a product that could have a favorable effect on them, a coupon for 15% off of a vitamin E or whatever the supplement is. Can you do stuff like that?
So again, it depends on how the contract is set up. The key piece you have to worry about is, depending on how that contract is set up, it could say that you agree to allow us to share data. Now, there are state laws that say you can't just sort of do a wholesale sharing of data. You can do like for specific purposes. But if, let's say, you say, I'm going to use this data to market to you, and you say that's okay, maybe there's a conversation to be had. I don't know what their specific contract says.
Right.
Now, I would imagine that it doesn't. Let's assume for a second that it doesn't say that. In that scenario, what they are only allowed to do is take the front end stuff and go, you've bought vitamin E from us before. You've bought vitamin D from us before, so we'll give you a coupon to buy more. What you cannot do is go, I saw you buy XYZ prescription product. I'm now going to sell you vitamin E because it works really well with it. For example, a really good example of that would be calcium in behind the counter and vitamin D in front of the counter, because vitamin D helps with absorption of calcium. So you got to be careful about how you negotiate that. Having said that, you raised a really interesting and important point. So I'm going to share a thing, and I should have brought it up, but we didn't. I'm going to share my screen. So give me just 1 second.
You're doing
hold
that.
on, I'll let you know a second.
Look at some scary stuff here. These scary sharks that are in the water.
Can you see my can you see my screen?
I cannot yet.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. I see it.
So the key piece is, there's actually, as we speak, a merger happening between Albertsons and Kroger. And this is, I think it's deemed to be the largest merger between grocery chains ever, if I understand. If that is true, because it's 579 stores, as you can tell, the key piece is the pharmacy and healthcare services. And so what did they say? The Idaho-based Albertsons will not interfere with the operations of the 579 stores. The companies plan to sell to Keene-based CNS wholesale grocers. So my point being, and again, we can get into the details of this and what it means and all that good stuff. I do a lot of M&A stuff anyways, so I help with buying and selling pharmacies. However, antitrust is something I pull in experts for. There are antitrust concerns that can kick in. This can also affect things like availability. This can also affect things like pharmacy deserts. So keep all of that in mind. Your pharmacy could be a linchpin in the community. And you will know if your pharmacy is a linchpin in the community. So your competition may not be disappearing. But going back to the point we were making earlier, can you mix and intermix that data? Not always. As you can tell, they actually separate those two portions out, those two sides out. And that's how companies often exist. Having said that, there is another antitrust issue going on that I don't know if you heard, but Google's being sued by the DOJ, or may get sued by the DOJ. And one of the concerns is that I think it's Google. You buy one thing, you get the other. And there's a lot of like interselling between the different components, which is exactly what you were talking about, Todd. It's the same exact concept. People are eager to use all sources to maximize their position or to strengthen their position. And the DOJ are careful about, are you abusing your position? So it's less of an issue for an independent pharmacy, but as you start getting bigger and more of a dominant player, you have to be careful about the role your pharmacy plays and the data your pharmacy gives access to. But yeah, that would be something I'd think about. Other things to think about include, like, for example, vaping. There's a whole discussion happening. Should your pharmacy's front end sell vapes or not? I have a gas station, and my gas station I sell vapes, and I always think about my role as a pharmacist and what I think about that. Having said that, my gas station I don't think it would generate any kind of profit if I didn't. So what does that mean? And are vapes like a step down from cigarettes, and it's helpful? So it's, again, think about your role, your ethical role as a pharmacist as you continue as well. as an independent pharmacy owner.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump back into this article from.
We didn't get past the first ad.
I know, because the sharks were in the water.
Exactly.
So this is an article from Ohio Valley, just published yesterday, August 27th, and it's titled "Ohio Pharmacy Raided by the DEA." So I'm going to open this up to you and just our
Can you close the reserve next season flu block for a second? Lower the ad itself at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
You need an ad blocker, Todd.
I know, I do.
Next to it, to the X on the side.
There we go.
There you go.
There. Nice. It's working. It's worked.
It's worked. So here's the thing you have to worry about. As you can tell, Chip is no longer allowed to sell his controlled substances. This is happening August 27th. And today is the 28th. So this is happening as we speak, basically. So let's scroll down. Let's see what happened here. We didn't get into the details. I barely glanced at it. At 5 o'clock, the DEA was removing controlled substances. They voluntarily surrendered their license. So he can still dispense non-controlled drugs. And there was a search warrant that was executed. First things first, if this happens, get a lawyer. This is not a let me see what I can do, let me see if I can negotiate something. This is not the time to do that. DEA walks through the door, you lawyer up as quickly as you possibly can. The problem is, do you know a lawyer who can do this for you immediately? There are white collar crime attorneys who can help. I do a little bit of this stuff, but the fact is that I would direct you to a litigator, because I want your rights to be protected. But the litigator may still want someone like me to help. So you probably get 2 people helping you through this process. You have to be careful though. So the other reason is, why is this happening? The DEA doesn't just enter a random pharmacy and go, I want to examine your records. They often have a reason. So what happened there becomes a real question. Do you have a controlled substances program? Are you intermingling your controlled substances? In many states, they actually require that your controlled substances be either in a safe, so that it can't just be pulled out, or completely intermixed with all your other medications. So that becomes a real concern, a real consideration. Todd, for all the branding that you have, how do you not have branding on your cup? This is what you need.
Right here, buddy. Pharmacy.
There you go. Thank you.
I gotta send you one.
I do need one. When the Podfather sends you something, you accept it.
Yes. Yeah. Or you'll have a big bloody horse head in your bed if you don't do what we say, right?
There you go.
That's gross. We're not talking about veterinary and pharmacy today. We're talking about.
Oh, we should do that one though. That's a really good topic to get into as well. Compounding pharmacies for vets, which is an interesting topic all by itself. But I think you need to have a controlled substances program. You need to make sure that, for example, are you actually keeping track of your do you have a continuous count of a perpetual inventory count, if you will? And how is that working out for you? Are your drugs being diverted? So I don't know. I think his name was Chet off that website, but I don't know whether the argument is that he was selling things or inappropriately, or someone in his pharmacy was, and he didn't have enough controls in place. Make sure that you have those processes, you have those controls in place. People forget that when you have a pharmacy, it's not just about you're doing the right thing, but also that you're making sure that people who work for you are doing the right thing. And that's important. That's critical. How are you seeing pharmacists talk? Are pharmacists even talking about this, Todd? Or because I haven't seen anyone discuss this.
So it's bits. There isn't anyone that's specifically talking about what you bring to the table, which is why I love having you here. But we do have instances where different sectors. I've seen a lot of questions being asked at like the Assembia specialty pharmacy conferences and NASP, where the specialty pharmacy groups coming together, because they're coming right out of the gate talking more about business necessarily than just clinical, Whereas
Right.
when you go to something, NACDS was the same way. We were talking about business most of the time, and clinical was kind of secondary. I think NASP has a really nice blend. They have an upcoming program that's going to really have a nice balance of fusion and
You
such.
know what they need? They need a podcast of you and me having these conversations for business people. NASP, you need to sponsor Todd. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're on the network already, so they
There you go.
in some ways, and it's exciting to have worked with that team for as long as we have. This will be our 4th year back as their
Wow.
podcast partners, and it's fun to work with that whole team. Harry Travis, shout out to Harry. He's out of Florida. He's a longtime veteran of business and pharmacy, a pharmacist. He's worked for senior vice president in the CVS land, and a consultant with a ingestible pill capsule that as soon as it hits your stomach acid, it activates some nodes. And so he's going to be at NASP, and he wants to talk about artificial intelligence. You and I have to have an AI session that has a legal side to it, and really about, boy, that one could go deep.
Oh, I've done multiple talks for multiple industries on just AI, the problems with it, the opportunities with it. I'm curious for the people listening in. What topics in AI do you want us to hit in this conversation? What are things you're dealing with? Yeah. Is an independent pharmacy even looking at it? What are the opportunities it presents? I can tell you, for example, marketing, AI gives you so many opportunities. I know you're using them, Todd. I know I'm using them for my marketing.
Yep.
But is the independent pharmacy owner thinking about AI? What are some of the considerations they should be thinking about? Are they worried? Should they be worried about things like copyright infringement? Are they worried about things like you don't own the product that comes out of the AI system? These are questions no one's answering, and that's just the IP stuff. Then there are things like lack of data lineage and all that good stuff. But on the other hand, gives you some great opportunities because you get to do things like send out newsletters that you never had time to write. Yep. Now you can do a deeper dive and say, this is what your patients are facing. Here's what we do. Come talk to us.
Yep.
And they can write copy for you.
So IPC, the Independent Pharmacy Cooperative, has about 4,600 members. They're working with Health Marts, with the McKesson teams. They have an amazing platform called iCare Plus, and it's all about digital health. The first one that they're really going after to teach, coach, support, and get billed and get paid, which is the important part.
Reimbursement
is the world of telehealth. And that's one of our subjects today is telehealth. Yeah. And that, hey, we know it's here to stay. We know it's going to expand opportunities for pharmacists to engage and to become medication managers and make some money at counseling in ways that pharmacists were giving it away most of the time. But here's an article from the Recorder that says telehealth is here to stay. Here are some of the considerations for mitigating regulatory risks. And then, of course, that I start thinking of the sharks in the water.
So the key piece to think about is, first of all, Todd, we want to think about, hold on. Jennifer, what's stopping them? Jennifer's asking a question, Todd. We should answer that.
Oh, yeah.
What's stopping them from using it? Dispel the fear. So what questions who's the they, first of all? I didn't fully understand Jennifer's question. Jennifer, who did you have in mind when you said what's stopping them from using it? Pharmacy owners?
True, yeah. They do a lot of work with pharmacy owners, specialty. We want to know specifically what the shark is. These guys are scary. They're out there in the water. Look, they're swimming around. Look at this, coming after me. Damn.
Pulling it straight out of Jaws.
I don't want this regulatory body coming after me and biting me. Look at this. Just swallowed my child, which is the Pharmacy Podcast Network, in a careers way. You know, I have to think about my own law stuff, but yeah, that could be we could do content developers legal Shark Week.
Yeah. Oh, so Jennifer, meaning you were saying, what do we think the pharmacist who owns independent pharmacies are thinking about AI? Well, I think they are not thinking about AI. Many of the independent pharmacy owners are often overwhelmed. It went from being very little work for pharmacy owners to a lot of work for pharmacy owners. So I think that's going to be the concern or consideration. Okay. She was saying that to find out what the fears are because AI can be so beneficial to follow up. And we should probably have that conversation with a pharmacy owner. What is scaring them? So I think that would be good as well.
That'd be wonderful. I want to get back to the telehealth because you gave us that topic as an idea to dig into. And what are some of the legalities around counseling, follow-up? How is it working? But what were you thinking when you brought up telehealth?
So I'm working with a couple of telehealth pharmacy clients, and one of the things I often have to think about is, first of all, who is your audience? Who are you selling to? Are you a 503A? Right now it's coming up a lot, as you know, Todd. Either it comes up in the context of I'm being asked to help the pharmacy itself, or I'm being asked to help the doctor's office. If I'm being asked to help the pharmacy, you're starting to think about, okay, am I a 503A? Am I a 503B? If I'm a 503A, here are my concerns. If I'm a 503B, here are my concerns. The next question is, if you are the doctor's office, which one do you want? Why does it make a difference? For example, in the GLP-1s, the big concern that you are facing is, can I continue to make your Ozempics of the world, or the Wegovy's of the world, or the tirzepatides of the world, or whatever you want to call it, in a world where they're now coming, the shortages are being resolved. I don't know if you saw today's news. Today's news was that Lilly, I think it was Lilly, has dropped the price of their medication to $3.99. Let me see if I can pull up are you able to pull up?
Yep, I'm going to do it right now.
Awesome. So this might start impacting pharmacists, because it will start impacting pharmacists, because you may not be able to compound for drugs on shortage if your drug is not actually on shortage. And then the big argument was, well, I'm cheaper. There we go. The big argument was, I'm cheaper, except you may not be cheaper if Lilly's selling it for, I think it was $3.99 if I remember correctly. This is today's news. So this is why you tune in to Shark Week, because you get information from today. True. Not yesterday, not day before, today. And that's why you got to listen to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Yeah.
But look at that. So Zepbound is for $3.99, which is often what a lot of pharmacies are selling it for. Mm-hmm. And I'd be curious to see. Can you pull up the Hims or Rose stock price? I'd be curious what happened to them.
Yes, absolutely.
So, because that's where a lot of companies are getting their money. In a world where you are depending on that income, this is the fact that the shortage may get resolved will affect what you can and cannot do.
This was yesterday's, and you can see there was a massive drop. This morning at 11:20 a.m., which was
actually do a 5-day.
A 5-day.
Instead of the 1 day that you have up there. So instead of there you go. So you can see what happened it went from 970 yesterday.
Yep.
No, there you go. That peak right there. So 950. Is that right? No, it went from 970 to 950.
True.
Which is pretty big.
Yeah. It is.
So that's Lilly. I'm curious. That's what happened to Lilly. I'm curious what happened to Hims. So I think that's probably when they made the announcement.
Hims. Here it is.
And do the 5-day. Let's see what happened there. Yeah. You can see the drop right there.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing how our market is a living animal out there. It's a shark in and of itself.
There you go.
Got to keep it happy and fed, so you can't have it attacking you.
So I think that's the key piece as we continue, right? This idea that so there are several issues you need to be thinking about. Number one, what do you do in the case of shortages? Number two, there is the prohibition against wholesaling, because so you can't be and there are some rules that the FDA put out around compounding pharmacies, specifically 503Bs, reselling to other pharmacies, for example. And what are the rules around that? In many cases, you're simply not allowed to just resale because you're not a manufacturer in the same sense. But there are ways you can do it, and there are some controls in place. Then there is but a 503A might be able to do that if you're doing it for a one-off patient. But are you a one-off patient if, for example, you are using the same formulation for everyone and you have pre-printed things saying, oh, you know what, we just add thiamine, it's fine. In that case, is the thiamine really doing anything? And there are states that simply say you aren't allowed to compound GLP-1s. There are some states that say that if you buy into a subscription model, for example, there are not just your telepharmacy elements that you have to comply with. So that has privacy issues, there's registration issues, all that stuff. But you need to conform with the state's what's the word I'm looking for? There are some obesity subscription laws, like Florida actually has a couple of them. So those laws, people don't even know they exist. In fact, there are 2 different laws there that kick in. So talk to your lawyer. This is why it's important to come on to hear these tidbits, because it's coming after I'm doing research for someone. You get to be the beneficiary of it. Go read up on what the implications are. Telepharmacy, telehealth is full of all kinds of problems. Number one, one of the questions we start looking at is, okay, I'm going to have this prescription compounded. Well, how is it going to be delivered from because you're not talking about IV meds, from the pharmacy to the patient?
Yep.
And temperature variations become a real thing. Sterility and stability are 2 separate concerns and become a real issue as we continue. And people go, oh, I made the product well. Well, if you're a 503A, you can make it in batches, but there are limits to what you can do. 503B, you have other issues. So there are a variety of concerns, of considerations that you need to be thinking about. And Jennifer's been great at asking questions, but if you are dealing with a telepharmacy, if you are dealing with telehealth, we'd love to get your questions. What are you dealing with? And we're happy to sort of give you our take without knowing all the details, because that's what we're good at, having an opinion without knowing all the details. And then giving you sort of a first take, a first blush approach on what might make sense. And our friend Josh put this out onto his LinkedIn network, and people are asking the same questions. GLP-1s are things that they are all struggling with. So I talked about the prohibition against wholesaling. That's one question. But another question is marketing. Today's news, again, the FDA and the DOJ just settled a case against stem cell manufacturers because they were selling unapproved drugs, and they were essentially doing it to patients. And the way they were selling it was deemed to be problematic. Well, that all sounds great, but it sounds like it's completely independent, except it's not, because you're seeing a lot of ads from compounding pharmacies saying, our drug does ABC. You're making claims about your drug, and then they're using those drugs for those unapproved uses. You'll go, well, but Ozempic's approved. You are not Ozempic. You are a compounded product. It's a different thing. So you making claims may render your product, and you got to be careful about what kinds of claims you make. You don't want to render your product adulterated or misbranded as a result of those claims. And there are tons of settlements around sort of mislabeling and misbranding your product. So let me see if I can pull up the stem cell DOJ here. This is 20 hours ago.
Pull that up, and then we'll continue to look at these scary ass sharks inside the waters of healthcare, swimming around trying to bite us.
Present slides, not slides. Present.
And then the next one that we're going to talk about is drug delivery, because I have friends and I have clients who are now entering heavy, well, they've been around for 10 years, but they're becoming a whole nother level of assistance to community pharmacy through delivery. And it's getting very interesting how they're doing things with apps and GPS and geofencing.
Yeah.
really interesting.
You want to bring this up for a second?
Yep.
So the founder and chief executive of the injectable stem cell product pleads guilty for distribution of unapproved drug. You can just remove injectable stem cell product to compounding pharmacy because the rest of it may still apply of an unapproved drug. Because, let's see, blah, blah, blah. Manufacture and distribute, that would be completely legal for a compounding pharmacy. However, this is what he sold it as suitable for the treatment of a variety of conditions such as lung diseases, lung and heart disease, blah, 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 which is the problem. Oh. So you want to be careful about the claims that you're making.
Making claims.
Yes.
That makes sense. That's what you've been saying from our preface episode our pilot episode, we can call it last week, or last time we were here, it was exactly that. It was, what claims are you making? Because we were digging down into compounding pharmacy. Exactly
right. And that's what you want to be careful of. So it's not just whether or not you can make the drug. And then people go, oh, maybe I just won't put it on the website. I'll have it on brochures. Well, DOJ is not dumb. They will find the brochures. Well, maybe I just won't put it onto brochures. Maybe I'll just tell people. Well, there are lots of situations where the DOJ puts plants in, and they will hear what you're saying, and it'll be reported back to the DOJ. And that's happened. People have gone to jail over this as well, and people have lost their licenses over this as well. I was talking to someone yesterday who was involved in similar cases. So be very, very careful. It's not as simple as I'm allowed to make the drug, so I'm allowed to talk about it. So one of the common things people talk about, and we talked about this a little bit, Todd. People say, well, Ozempic is approved for diabetes and weight loss, so I can talk about Ozempic is approved for diabetes and weight loss, so I can talk about my compounded product talk about my compounded product in the same way. No, you can't, because your product was never approved. Well, maybe what I can do is I can talk about how this drug overall can be used for diabetes and weight loss, because I'm having that conversation, except you're not having the conversation as a scientific discussion. You're doing it to sell your product.
Yes.
And it's very, very easy. It's not a loophole to go, I'm talking generalities, because you're not. You're making the product, you're talking about the off-label uses of a similar product to suggest that your product can be used for those off-label uses. Be very careful. You don't want to be like John, I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, Kosalcharan. So avoid that problem. But yeah, we can go into the next piece if you like, Todd. Yeah. Or we can keep talking about this one because there's loads to talk about here.
No, I really do want to get into this one because
let's do a separate one on GLP-1s and telepharmacy. Let's pull that one together. And so we're going to do one on AI. Yeah. And we're going to do one on telepharmacy itself. Just a whole podcast dedicated to that, a live stream dedicated to that. That'll be fun.
Yep. So let's talk about delivery, because you suggested that.
Sure. So I think for me, the delivery part of it becomes very complicated, because the big things that pop out to me is, how are you choosing your delivery vendor? How do you make sure that they, for example, what kind of training do they offer their delivery people? For example, let's say you're assuming I'm going to send it via a individual sort of company that you've chosen. Okay, do they have any kind of HIPAA training? Do they have any kind of controls? How do you ensure that they don't divert the product? How do you ensure that those products are kept in a safe, secure, temperature-controlled environment? And chances are you aren't doing any of that. You're sort of going, I found this company, and they will do all of these things for me. Find out more, because what you send may not be what the patient receives. Then another question that comes out is, you send the medication. How do you know that the patient actually received the medication? So sometimes you'll actually get a sign-off, but sometimes people will just leave the medication at the front door. And that's problematic as well, because I've been in situations where the pharmacist has been called out on that by PBMs, by the PSAOs. So be careful about each of those. So it's not just about, does the delivery system work, but what's happening between the time it leaves your pharmacy to the time it reaches the patient. And I can tell you this, Doctors will not send you those prescriptions, may not choose you as the provider if they think that you don't have controls in place to address those issues. I know that's a concern. I advise my clients, and they go, we don't want to go with this pharmacy provider. We'll go with another one because we have these questions. So we talked about a private deliverer, if you will, for lack of a better term. But you might have another one that is, say, an Uber, and they will deliver for you. Same exact questions. How do you know that they have controls in place? Are they HIPAA compliant? How do you know that they're HIPAA compliant? What controls? How do you know that the medication is it just sitting in like right next to them, and the guys kept the temperature, his car does not have the light, has the windows down. It's hot. Right now, it's like hot everywhere. I'm in Philadelphia right now, and it's really hot out there. You're in Pittsburgh. It's hot out there. Having the sun come on it, overheating the medication decomposes it, and sort of it addresses the stability of the drug. It may not affect the sterility, but it will affect the stability. On the other hand, the guy puts it, stores a bunch of it in his food refrigerator, and then pulls out all the meds later on and delivers them. Well, that affects the sterility of the product. It could affect the sterility of the product. What kind of checks do they have? What kind of balances do they have? Or questions you want to ask. Then third option, I'm just going to have the U.S. Postal Service deliver it. Well, you have none of the answers to the questions I just asked.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to tell the Postal Service? I want to audit you guys. They're just going to go no. But these are questions you should be asking as a pharmacist to know that your product is being distributed appropriately, that there are controls in place, privacy controls, data controls, theft controls. Find out what kind of insurance they carry. And those all become questions and concerns you want to address. I would be curious, you've spoken about friends who are in this space, Todd. What are things that they are talking about? How do they control? And we don't need to name names if you don't want to, but this is an area. One of my favorite things to talk about right now is, I don't know if you guys saw the CNBC posting that they did recently, where they talked about how community pharmacies, specifically the large ones, are failing. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I'm going to try to bring it up.
Yeah, there's so many articles out right now about not only PBM reform, but big news agencies finally recognizing what pharmacy is going through, and they're finally making the public aware of it, because the public just doesn't understand. Who I was referencing is actually.
Can you see my screen for a second?
Yes. Oh, there we go.
This one right here, they did a whole video on it, and I can bring it up. It's on YouTube, but they did a whole thing on why pharmacies like Walgreens and CVS are shuttering locations. They made a whole mention. It was a half hour. I think it was a 20-minute thing. I'm doing a full half-hour analysis on it, so I'm happy to share that with the audience. But the key piece there is the fact that pharmacy hasn't evolved. We're still sort of just going, we'll upcharge you on ice cream and donuts in the front, or ice cream and makeup in the front, but you haven't really offered something to today's patient, to today's consumer. I want to stay at home. I want my medication at home at the time I want it. What are you doing to make that process easier for me? And no one's doing that. And these delivery companies, there you go, thank you. These delivery companies are that step. They're steps in the right direction.
Yep. And it's causing distress that we haven't reached the pinnacle. We haven't seen what's going to come of so many of the pharmacies shutting down, 7,000 plus, as you saw just on the screen with the data from this video. And it's having huge public health impact, which in my unofficial evaluation is giving the independently owned community pharmacies an opportunity, if they're stable enough, to start taking on new pharmacies and being able to take on areas of pharmacies that are shut down. For example, the state of Michigan has 0 Rite Aids in it now. I mean, that's horrible. And I love Rite Aid. Rite Aid's a Pittsburgh-based from actually Harrisburg.
I worked for Rite Aid for like 10 years, 15 years, something like that, as a pharmacist.
Yep. So I mean, it's a big thing. Public health is threatened by lack of pharmacy accessibility and care. It's probably the number one issue.
So if you go back a second there, Todd, for a second.
Sure.
On that screen. Right there. Essentially, they talk about pharmacy deserts, and that's what you're talking about. This idea that there are places in the country that desperately need a pharmacy.
Yes, true. They do, because it's like, hey, I go there for not only prescriptions, but I go through for just basic healthcare stuff, supplements and topicals and whatever else is going on, and it's an issue for sure.
What I think is really important and is not being discussed is, yes, so theoretically speaking, these large chains are going to close stores, and those patients may come over to you. But here's what's going to happen to the independent pharmacist. They will come to you, but it doesn't mean you'll make a profit, because the PBMs are squeezing you at the same time. So you now have a situation where you're getting more patients, but not enough of a margin to justify it. In many cases, you're losing money on these drugs, and you're required to take those patients anyways, even though you're losing money. So I think that PBM reform is going to become critical. It's going to become important. And as that gets addressed, I think we're going to see a new model of pharmacy form. And I think people talk about the death of pharmacy. I think it's the death of pharmacy as we know it. Correct. I think independent pharmacies are extremely well positioned to pivot.
Yep.
But I think we're so used to imagining and romanticizing the world of, oh, I saw my grandfather dispense medications to a person, and I wanted to do exactly that. And that's romanticized. But the truth is, today's pharmacist should probably be looking at your smartwatch and going, here's how many steps you're taking. Let me advise you on how this works in conjunction with your medication, so we can get you off that metformin, so we can get you to stop your diabetes medications, because that's in the greater good.
Yes.
Working collaboratively with physicians. You're seeing this all happen in the context of physicians taking control, which is great and awesome for them. But what about pharmacists? And pharmacists can do a lot of that. In fact, I think there was, and again, we're getting into areas that is problematic, but hold on, let me see if I can pull this up.
I will let you know, we are running out of time.
I recognize that. Thank you.
Meetings. So, I'm going to be working with SureScripts here at 1:00 this afternoon, which is just wonderful to have them back on the show. But I wanted to shout out to answering our question, and that is, are there organizations out there who are mitigating, lowering the risks for you and managing the world of delivery from almost every aspect you can think of? And the answer is yes. There's organizations that are super intimate to community pharmacy. This organization I vetted myself. I always do so. I got their name from Lisa Fost from her conference. I poked around at them. I asked lots of questions. I did my own sleuthing and investigation. And now they're giving us content about intelligent, pinpoint delivery for your pharmacy, tied back to data, tied back to metrics, tied back to trust and temperature control and just everything. So the name of this organization is RX Mile. So if you are curious as a listener about them, please look up rxmile.com.
Do you want to put up my screen for just 1 second? Because this might be something we talk about next time. Because this is becoming an area that started off in February, but it's going to keep gathering steam. What is the difference between pharmacists and physicians? And we talked a little bit a few seconds ago about how pharmacists can start finding their own niches to get into. Physicians are worried about pharmacist scope creep, and the AMA is fighting the scope creep by saying pharmacists and physicians do different things. They get 4 years of post-grad training. They have no residency requirement. I mean, at this point, I'm not sure it's not a requirement. I feel like a lot of pharmacists do it, but it's like saying physicians don't have a residency requirement. They don't. I mean, it'd be highly recommended, But I know physicians who haven't done a residency. But I think that's going to become a battleground for pharmacists as we continue. And what is the role of physicians? What is the role of pharmacists, PAs, NPs? Should they work under physicians, collaborative practice agreements, and so much more? And we should talk about that next time as well, because I know we've run out of time.
We have, but this is awesome. We thank you so much for listening to Legal Shark Week with Darshan Kulkarni. Please reach out to Darshan on LinkedIn if you have any other questions, or what website can they go to reach out to you?
You can go to kulkarnilawfirm.com. I'm trying to get FDALawguy.com to work, but right now, kulkarnilawfirm.com. And my last name's Kulkarni, lawfirm.com.
Hey, pharmacy champions out there, people doing anything and everything to care for people, pharmacy care, appreciate you. Reach out to us if we can ever help you, and we'll talk to you next time on Legal Shark Week. See you guys later.